I want to bring in former White House Communications Director under President George W. Bush and author of the new novel, Madam President, which I have read and I wrote a blurb for. It's a terrific read. It's the third in the series about President Charlotte Kramer. Republican strategist Nicolle Wallace, thank you so much. It's great to see you. This is a great book. I want to get to it in a second, but I do want to ask you.
At first, you want to ask to respond to a fight between two former bosses.
Exactly. But I know you love them both Jeb Bush and George W. Bush. If you were advising Jeb Bush,
which I am not,
which you are not, how would you advise him to deal with the George W. Bush thing? You can't really distance yourself from your brother, but by the same token, there is a lot of baggage there, especially when it comes to the war in Iraq.
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, it's important to note for your viewers that the campaign is saying something very different. They're saying that he was specifically referring to Israel. George W. Bush has long and deep relationships there, was a very strong ally of Israel, which, as you know better than anybody, is under constant threat in the region. So I think it's an important issue. It's going to be an important issue for Hillary Clinton, too. I don't think Israelis feel that Israeli-U.S. relations are at a high point. So this is going to be a bigger issue in this general election than it has been perhaps in the recent past. But, you know, they're not toddlers. It's not like Jeb Bush needs to call his brother to ask him where the bathroom is. The notion that you wouldn't ask every former president of both parties for their advice about vital American alliances is ridiculous.
Right. Let's talk about the book. So the third in the series, President Charlotte Kramer is one of the main characters in the book. There's a lot that happens in this book, but one of the things that happens is she gives a big policy speech having to do with abortion.
Yeah.
Without getting into abortion, I do wonder if you think women candidates talk about issues differently than men candidates.
Yeah, you and I know each other well enough. You know that's one of my fantasies, frankly. I mean, this book is really, it's about this moment in our politics, which I think are so broken and such a put-off to so many people. And part of the reason that I think women could be one of the solutions to this low point in how appealing politics is to people is that we put people off. There's no tolerance anymore for saying, I may be pro-life, but I understand that you're pro-choice from the most noble part of your belief system, or I believe something very different. I disagree with you about whether the Iraq war was worth it, but let's join hands and do something important and lasting for military families. No one hears or sees any of that, and I do think that women are uniquely suited to bring out more of that in our politics.
That's interesting. There are two women presidential candidates right now, Carly Fiorina, the former Hewlett-Packard CEO, and of course, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. There's something I've been thinking about a lot when it comes to either one of those candidates, but to be frank, more Hillary because she's much more likely to get her party's nomination.
I mean, we'd be misleading. I mean, Carly at this point is very much a long shot.
But here's the question. I think that there will probably be a lot of women, even moderate women, even Republican women, who go into that voting booth, assuming Hillary Clinton's on the ticket, and feel compelled to vote for her just because it is so historic, because 43 men have been president, no woman has. And even if she positions herself, presumably, as something of a moderate, they might do that. And I've asked a bunch of Republicans, don't you think that assuming your candidate's a male, there should be extra consideration to putting a woman on the ticket? Republicans hate that identity politics thing, but I think it's beyond that.
Well, Democrats do too, because look at the results of the 2008 primary. You would have thought that more women would have walked into the voting booth and did just what you described, said, I like them both, but I think it's time for women. So Democrats didn't do that when they were put to the test in 2008. So I think time and time again, voters have rejected identity politics. I think what's different now is that while President Obama promised an end to childish things in his first inaugural address, that is not what has come to pass. And I think that, I think the opportunity that Hillary Clinton has and Carly has, frankly, is to talk about issues where we know we cannot reach consensus. You can't convince someone who's pro-choice to be pro-life. You can't convince someone who's anti-war to say, yeah, they were a good idea. But maybe we can start talking about these things. This is certainly the fantasy I play within the novels. Maybe we can start talking about these things in a way that lets everyone at least stay at the table and finish their meal.
So former President Bill Clinton, so far, and he is a huge political asset.
For sure.
So far,
you know, all my former bosses call him a friend now. So
right, exactly. But so far, especially because of the Clinton Foundation, he's been a little bit more of a problem for the campaign than a help. That will no doubt change in the coming months. But they talked about how he would play a smaller role in this campaign than he did in 2008. That doesn't seem to have happened yet.
And I don't know if he's capable of it. You know, I think we're going to find out, frankly, in the next few months where the country really is. You know, I think we live in a country that swings from center right to center left, and that's how elections are determined. We're also going to find out if Bill Clinton has the Constitution to be the dimmer light in the Clinton orbit. And I'm just as interested in the answer to that question as the first.
I want to play a little sound from Secretary Clinton earlier this week where she talked about immigration.
We can't wait any longer for a path to full and equal citizenship. When they talk about legal status, that is code for second-class status.
What do you make of that? A lot of Republicans seem to call that extreme, but I've heard other observers say she's running a general election message and she's putting Republicans like Rubio and Jeb in a box.
Well, and George W. Bush called for a path to legal citizenship after the borders were secured once and for all and after workplace enforcement was made the law of the land. So certainly when George W. Bush tried to accomplish this with the Congress in 2005 and 2006, that was part of the package. It didn't pass. I mean, the problem with what Clinton is suggesting is that there actually are Republicans who have been in the debate. Marco Rubio has been in the fight, and he's been trying to get something done. And so I don't think she's going to succeed in putting Marco Rubio in a box. But I think the next question for her is, well, how do you do it? I mean, her own party wasn't willing to go along with George W. Bush or, frankly, President Obama. But I think, you know, if there's one policy problem that has been a failure of both President Bush's years and President Obama's years, it's the, you know, task of doing something about illegal immigration, and doing nothing is probably not a possibility for either party.
The book is Madam President, a novel, third in the series by Nicolle Wallace. You're going to sign this for me before you leave.
Of course.
Nicolle Wallace,
Thank
it's so
you
great
so
to
much.
have you.
It's so fun to come. You need to come visit us on The View.
Anytime, anytime.